talk about the splashy headlines and beyond the splashy headlines. How is biopharma digitizing?
Yeah, I think slowly, and they're kind of putting their big toe into the water a bit. Most are looking at digitizing around R&D and the management of the vast amount of information that has to be collected during a clinical trial. And that's a really important area. The FDA has opened up some pathways that allow companies to start taking some steps in this way, but we still have a ways to go because first, we don't really know how to do it. Second, there really aren't that many validated endpoints to transform the way we use the data. And three, there are a lot of privacy and security concerns that need to be overcome before people, I think, do it more regularly, which would allow us to really digitize health records, digitize the clinical trial record, and that would create, I think, profound changes in the way we create medicines, approve medicines, find new medicines, but that's, I think, a few years away, unfortunately, still.
And when it comes to your business, who do you think of as the end user, and how do you think about creating that culture with them?
Yeah, I think ultimately for Allergan, we kind of think about it a little differently. We're digitizing a little bit more on the commercial side as well as the R&D side, but we think of the end user in both instances as the patient or the consumer of the product. And you know, it's funny, over the history of the development of pharmaceuticals, of medicines, we've always thought of the disease. So we want to fix high cholesterol. We come up with a statin to cure high cholesterol, but we don't think about Rebecca as a person that potentially is suffering from high cholesterol. So I think,
and she is, by the way.
Right. All right. Well, I was using as an example.
Full disclosure.
Okay. But you know, I think that the reality is the future. If we could get to a truly digitized, system inside of biopharma, we will create the medicine for you, right? We will create a medicine for all the characteristics of you. It could be a DNA-based medicine. It could be based on a variety of different attributes that are more personalized to you versus a class that's treating a disease. And ultimately, I think that will lead to better outcomes and more efficient medicine, better medicine, and better outcomes.
Do you think it's the payers that ultimately drive the change?
Unfortunately, I think the change is so profound. I think the only entity that could really bend the curve in terms of the timeline is the government. So if Medicare came out and said, we're only going to pay based on submissions from a digital health record, for example, we're going to standardize digital health records. We want to make sure we know all the important aspects of health. We're going to digitize that. We're going to look at it. We're going to de-identify. We're going to protect it. We're going to secure it. But we're going to require it. It would fundamentally change the timeline for how fast this industry digitizes. And I guess they're a payer, so
sure,
technically it is
absolutely.
a payer. Yes.
And given the investments that you've made at Allergan, culturally inside the company, how have you thought about this innovation in a world where a lot of people just aren't used to it? It's a very siloed world, or it can be.
Yeah, so what we did, I think, which was a little different, is we just did it completely differently than anything else we ever did. So take the commercial side, where we really, I think, are the forefront of digitizing the way we market and promote and sell many of our medicines, particularly in our aesthetics medicines business, because our relationship to the consumer, the user, is a lot closer than it is when we're selling, let's say, a mental health drug or an Alzheimer's drug. And in that case, what we did is we went out and we hired people that don't look like us, that don't have the background of a typical biopharma person. We hired a woman who was in the startup world to really create a whole new enterprise inside of Allergan in a different office with all their own office space and recruit people more like her. She was involved more in digital consumer and fashion. And you would never hire that kind of person traditionally at a pharma company, but we did, and now we have an office of, let's say, 120 people more like that than like us that are teaching us about how to digitize marketing and commercial. And we're teaching them a little bit about the rules and regulations of pharmaceuticals.
Sure.
But it's changed the culture inside of the entire organization. It's spread to China, it's spread to Europe, it's gone all over our offices around the world.
That point, though, around the regulatory obstacles seems to be a point of tension whether you want to call it that or not, it's still going to be an obstacle inside of any company in your space that's thinking about digitizing.
Absolutely, but it's an obstacle for us regardless. So, if we want to run a TV commercial, or we want to put an ad in a magazine, or we want to recruit for a clinical trial, or we want to create a design for a clinical trial, all those things require immense regulatory scrutiny and effort. And we just have the apparatus to deal with those things today. So as we think about digital, we don't understand it, and our regulator is just learning about it. And so there's still a lot of gray zones, and we get very nervous when we're in gray zones as an industry. But you know what, I think there are ways to persevere, there's ways to work through it, there's ways to engage with the regulators, there's ways to test things. And I think most importantly, you just have to be, not afraid to fail, right? Because we're going to do some things and they're not going to work. And sometimes big companies have this fear of failure. We actually embrace it when it comes to these types of initiatives, because that's the only way we're going to try it.
Thank you so much, Brent.
Thank you for having me.